Hey, my friends. So, look, I want to do a video about something here. Super important that everyone needs to be aware, especially if you're a black person or you are interested in, justice for black people. So, you may have noticed if you've been on the internet a lot, which hopefully you haven't, but a lot of us have. There are all these pages popping up, particularly like racially themed pages. So, they're like, oh, you want to learn about blacks in Colombia? Click on this fucker's link right here, and it's going to be some gringo guy explaining to you about blacks in Colombia. You want to learn about blacks in Venezuela, you want to learn about whatever. There's all this content being pushed around. Um, a lot of times, the persons behind the account appear to be African American. Um, I'm not sure, but it seems like most of the time they are. Um, some of them are like diasporic, maybe they are like parents are Latin American or they came over when they were young. But a lot of these people, you'll notice they're making content about race relations in Latin America. And, you know, something that is extremely important for any person to realize who wants to understand the situation in Latin America is that you cannot talk about race relations in Latin America without talking about politics. There is no way you can extract the conversation around race from politics in Latin America. If you encounter any content that is trying to take the political aspect out, this content is more than likely paid for by the State Department and funded by the State Department. The State Department is not your friend, right? The State Department is the same one as led by Marco Rubio, and they want to put war in Colombia, Venezuela. If you ask me honestly, I think they want to have war in all of Latin America, because that's been the track record so far. And they are doing it in a very clever way. So I'll give an example. I've been following a few Panamanian content creators, right? I'm not going to name names because I don't want to embarrass anyone, but a lot of you will know who I'm talking about. There is a particular content creator who is female, and her content is actually pretty good. Followed her for a while, and she's always talking about, the mestizos are doing this, and the blancos are doing this, and black people have no voice in Latin America, which is true. She's not telling lies, right? Per se. However, I noticed the closer we got to the reality of war with Venezuela and apparently Colombia, the more anti-leftist her content and other black content creators' content became, right? So, they're inching toward the war with Venezuela, or should I say running toward the war with Venezuela. And all of a sudden, you get a video, well, I don't fuck with leftists. Oh, okay. Well, I want to ask you a question. At least in Brazil, I can speak about Brazil, and I've been around. In Brazil particularly, and in Colombia, it is because of the left that you have any progress whatsoever on racial issues and issues of gender and sexuality as well. It's because of the left, right? So if you are going around here on your platform and you're denouncing the left, you are denouncing racial progress. You are denouncing progress on issues, related to equality, same-sex marriage, so on and so forth, affirmative action. In Brazil, the only reason that there is affirmative action is because of the left pushed it. Now, there's a lot of criticisms people have of Lula da Silva, of the left, of the PT party in Brazil. There's a lot of criticism, right? But you cannot separate those factors. And any content that you see that's trying to get you to be like, oh, well, let's learn about the black Venezuelans, but you're not talking about the fact that Hugo Chavez is essentially a mulatto. He's a black man. Well, I would say he is a person of African descent, right? Who advocated for black rights. The whole controversy around him was because he is a black man, right? You can't talk about the issue without addressing the politics. So y'all gotta be very careful out here. Yeah. Going back to the Panamanian person, there are historical facts that are super important to understand, and you're not going to learn them online. You need to get a book. You need to, like, an actual book, and be careful who you read the book from. If you're learning about a specific area or a specific people, talk to those people. Read their writings. If you are curious about who Hugo Chavez was, read Hugo Chavez's writings. There are no shortage. That man was very prolific. You know, you want to understand Chile, Brazil, go to the source and read the sources, even if you have to translate them. Do not listen to these fucking people on their platforms, because most of them are fucking ops. They're feds. They are feeding you bullshit on purpose. I don't know how else to say it. Be extremely careful. Panamanian content creators. So I've noticed that, you know, a lot of these folks, they make these videos about Afro-Latino issues, but these videos aren't in fucking Spanish or in Portuguese. What's the fuck is the point of making videos about Afro-Latino issues if the videos aren't going to be in the language of the Afro-Latinos? Right? And now, of course, I understand, you know, you can have subtitles and whatnot, but I mean, it's almost like it's a psyop. It's almost like, oh, yeah, you're going to make these videos about Afro-Latino experience in English because you want African Americans, Afro-British, other diasporic groups, particularly African Americans, you want them to hear how bad it is. You want to talk about it, and you want them to be able to engage with the content, and they are the priority audience. So, question, why is it that Afro-Latin Americans are centering black gringos in their content, right? I'm not saying you can't be a part of it. I'm just saying, though, if your point is to make content to help better the situation for black Latinos, make the content in fucking Spanish or Portuguese. Hell, you can make it in French, but make the content in the language that corresponds. And if there's people who are gringos and they want to participate, they can learn. They can learn. Just like we all have to learn English coming to the United States. They can fucking learn our language. And if they don't want to learn, then they shouldn't be participating, to be frank. That's my opinion. But you'll see these videos, and they'll be like, oh, well, you know, today in Venezuela, the average black Venezuelan lives this way, and they're oppressed, and blah, 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 blah. Yes, that is true. That is true. But the forces in Venezuela, in Colombia, in Peru, in Brazil, that are trying to fight against that marginalization and oppression are on the left, have always been on the left. There is no right-wingers in Latin America that are supporting racial justice. If anything, they are worse than the Jim Crow style racists here in the United States. So be very careful where you consume your media. You know, study the history of countries like Panama. Did you all know that Panama, before it became independent or was taken essentially from Colombia, it was a part of Colombia, right? And then the United States decided, oh, we can run a canal through there so we don't have to fucking go around the whole goddamn continent. Let's just run a fucking canal right through this Colombian province. They strategically sowed discord and chaos in that little tip there of Colombia so they could invade it, break it off, and make the whole entire country of Panama. That's very uncomfortable. If you're Panamanian, that fucking sucks, right? Like, if you want to love your country and be patriotic, your country is essentially Israel of Latin America. Now, does that mean you have to burn your Panamanian passport and move to Colombia? I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that you have to know your history. If you don't know the history, you can be fooled. Yeah? And the same history, it's not like it happened all these years ago and it has nothing to do with today. It is the continuation of the narrative of what it is happening today, right? They're able to break off Panama and make it its own country that's essentially the bitch of the United States. They're going to do the same thing with every Latin American country. Mark my words. We're going to see it happen with Venezuela, with Colombia, with Ecuador. This is their strategy, right? Fermenting the right wing, demonizing the left wing, and taking over. Gotta be smart. Huh? Cuídense.